This presentation covers a hard disk with 5 partitions, where the main switch will assume 4 positions to stop viruses and hackers from harming and compromising stored data. To appreciate how the main switch accomplishes its mission in hard disks, we need to recall their basic structure. A hard disk consists of platter surfaces, where each surface has its own read and write heads. A hard disk may consist of a single or multiple platter surfaces. Because data storage and classification critically impacts the function of the main switch, data may be classified into 5 categories. The first is the trusted files category, which will be used to save factory-installed operating systems such as Windows and Photoshop, and for saving programs from a trusted source such as a supplier's CD or DVD. These will be saved on the first partition, the so-called trusted partition, shown here in blue. The second is the Internet Applications category, used to save applications downloaded from the net or from other sources of uncertain integrity. These will be saved on the second partition, the so-called Internet Applications partition, shown here in yellow. The third is the confidential category, which will be used to save confidential user-generated data. These will be saved on the third partition, the so-called confidential partition, shown here in green. The fourth is the non-confidential partition category, which will be used to save non-confidential user-generated data in addition to data from trusted sources. This will be saved on the fourth partition, the so-called non-confidential data partition, shown here in orange. The fifth is the Internet data category, which will be used to save data downloaded from the Internet or other sources of questionable integrity. This will be saved on the fifth partition, the so-called Internet data partition, shown here in red. By assuming 4 different positions, the main switch will turn on and off the read and write heads of the trusted partition, Internet Applications partition, confidential partition, non-confidential partition, and Internet data partition. As the main switch assumes these 4 positions, the read or write delete heads will be green if they are switched on and red if they are switched off. So what happens when the main switch is in position 1, the so-called surfing position? The first position, the so-called normal mode position, is typically used for surfing the net. At this position, we are safe from hackers and viruses, and all our programs are secure and accessible because, as we can see from this table, the write-delete heads of the trusted partition, Internet Applications partition, confidential partition, and non-confidential partition are disabled. And since the read head of the non-confidential partition is switched on, a user may copy materials from the non-confidential partition and paste them to emails, as well as attach files from the non-confidential partition to emails and send them via the net. Furthermore, since the read and write-delete heads of the Internet data partition are enabled, all our new documents and data are stored on this partition. While surfing the net, viruses will be saved and imprisoned on the Internet data partition, and when the main switch is moved to position 2, prison doors will be locked and viruses will be paralyzed and prevented from accessing other partitions. When we finish surfing the net, the main switch is moved to position 2, the so-called non-surfing position. So what happens at this position? At the safe mode position, both the read and write delete heads of the Internet data partition have been disabled, simply because we are not surfing the net, and any virus present on this partition will be prevented from moving to other partitions. Prior to moving the main switch to position 2, we disconnect the Internet connection to prevent hackers from accessing confidential files and prevent viruses from infecting the system. The Internet connection can be physically or automatically disabled, for example, by adding an additional pole to the mode switch to terminate connection to the Internet when the main switch is moved to position 2. For further security, especially if users suspect certain sites, the computing machine may be restarted just before moving the main switch to position 2. This will not only erase any virus hidden in the random access memory of the computer, but will also enable us to move the main switch to position 3 and 4. Thus, users may confidently access confidential data, secure in the knowledge that their important confidential data are secure from hackers and viruses. But what happens when we want to move the main switch to position 3, the so-called downloading position? If a computer is switched on, first we must turn it off to eliminate any virus hidden in the computer's random access memory. When users want to download and install applications from sources of questionable integrity, the main switch will be moved to position 3, the so-called downloading position. But before we can do that, the first safety latch situated between position 2 and 3 must be pulled back to allow the main switch to move to position 3. At this position, and because the read and write delete heads of the Internet data partition are disabled, no Internet virus may access other partitions. And because the read and write delete heads of the confidential partition are disabled, all our confidential data stored on the confidential partition are safe and protected. Applications downloaded from unreliable sources will be saved on the Internet Applications partition. But before we run them, the main switch is pushed back to either position 1 or 2. Finally, at this position, viruses are harmless against any application stored on trusted partition or net application partition because these partitions are in a read-only mode. But what happens when we want to format the hard disk by moving the main switch to position 4? The fourth position is used for formatting disks, assigning and reassigning partitions, and installing applications, data, and documents when users are absolutely certain that no active network connection exists and all used removable media are trustworthy. At this position, all partitions are fully enabled for reading, writing, and deleting. In accordance with one or more embodiment of the present invention, a second safety latch, situated between position 3 and 4, must be pulled back to allow the main switch to move from position 3 to position 4. The security mechanism provided by the two safety latches will protect stored data and will prevent users from accidentally moving the main switch from position 2 to 3 or from position 3 to 4. By keeping the main switch at position 4, users may use the hard disk as a conventional hard disk drive. In a nutshell, this antivirus, anti-hacker hard disk drive will stop all viruses and hackers from harming and compromising stored data.